Not very many of them right now, but we'll wait for them to show up. Jack, how are you?
Okay. Damn this monitor.
You mean your fabulous new monitor?
Well, I'm trying to get it to work. I'm going on YouTube. I bought, for everybody's edification, I bought one of these 20 feet long Samsung curved monitors. It was expensive. It's 50-inch, I think. But they don't work with a Mac without serious modifications. And if I would have known that, I would have bought an LG, but I didn't. So I may be willing to sell this $1,000 monitor for $800 if anybody wants to game. It works great with any PC. The thing works great. It's just that Macs don't like it. And if there's anyone dumb enough to be using a PC, they have the ability to buy this couple of $100 off. But I think I'll be able to get it to work, Seth. I think it's just a question of.
I'm pretty sure you're right. Greetings to you too, Facebook user. When you're on Facebook and you're watching the show, we can't see who you are name wise because there's I guess Facebook refuses to allow everybody to use their likenesses and names because it's proprietary. But if you watch the show on YouTube, you definitely can. Boy, Jack, what a busy couple of days. Imagine my surprise when I'm scrolling through Facebook yesterday and I see one of my good friends mentioned that, hi, Martha, how are you?
Hi, Martha.
Martha's switching over. And I see one of my good friends from Brooklyn Friend School mentioned.
What does that mean? She's switching over.
She's going to go to YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So one of my good friends from Brooklyn Friend School on Facebook says, "Hey, isn't it great that Stacy Plaskett, part of the BFS alumni community, Stacy Plaskett, the new rising rock star in the Democratic Party, little cutie too. She, one of the house managers, brilliant mind, educated at my school, Brooklyn Friend School, which is K through 12 school."
So they didn't totally strike out.
No.
Good.
No. Despite the current evidence.
Yes.
They didn't strike out entirely.
Well, you know who didn't go there? Marjorie Green. She didn't go there, did she?
Marjorie Taylor Greene did not go to Brooklyn Friend School. She went to the Truck Stop Hooker Academy after she dropped out of dog grooming school.
So what I want to say, Seth, is we should follow the cultural progression from the bowling alley skank to the gym skank.
That's her culture, man. She digs the whole gym thing.
Well, you see this picture, Seth. That was one of her gym boyfriends here.
Oh, let's get him up on the screen so everybody can see her gymnasium boyfriend.
Yep, there's one of them.
Yeah. Do you have a name on this guy?
Let me see. I don't think.
Not that it really matters. I mean, Chad.
I love this. But I do think it's worth pointing out that she's banging Zangrave from Street something, whatever, Jim.
Street Fighter, I'm guessing.
Could be. Yeah, here he is.
Zangrave from Street Fighter. I'm gonna take myself down here for a second.
Okay.
There we go. Let's go look at Zangrave. Look at this freaking guy. Hey, Jack, did you notice that the wristbands match the package shorts?
Oh my God, look at that.
And look at that body hair is carved into what appears to be an arrowhead.
It's a Superman logo.
No, it's not.
I know, but I see things that aren't there. This guy is a psychological Rorschach test, Seth. You look at this, what do you see?
In other words, what is it about this guy that we should assume about Marjorie Taylor Greene?
or read our own emotional state into his image. Okay.
Oh, in other words, am I threatened? Am I anything?
He's a Rorschach test.
Right.
Okay.
Are we all Rorschach tests, though?
Yeah, but this is specifically for sexually disappointed Southern housewives.
Or sexually adventurous Southern housewives. First of all, here's the thing, okay? Marjorie Taylor Greene really does represent the Republican Party. This is whoever you are.
Identify yourself, can you please?
Yes.
We want to know who our 3 viewers are.
4 now, actually, or 5.
Oh, really?
So Jack, how do you feel John McCain or Ronald Reagan or George Herbert Walker Bush would feel about their standard bearer, the standard bearer of the party that claims to have defeated the Soviet Union, the standard bearer being Marjorie Taylor Greene and bespeckled skank from Colorado.
Gun-toting, bespeckled skank from Colorado. Yes.
The four-eyed fungus on the Congress from Colorado.
Right.
Bobert.
Yes.
How do you think Ronald Reagan's, the people for, Casper Weinberger, how would Cap Weinberger feel about Bobert and Greene now being the standard bearers for the craven and cowardly Republican Party?
I think that they would resent the fact that there were women.
Yeah.
Speaking of skanks, I've got to love this lady. You ready?
Yep.
Can you guess who it will be? I bet you can't.
All right. Before you put it up on your screen.
Yep.
The only clue I have from you is she's a skank.
Well, let me put it this way. This is the daughter from hell, and even Kelly Ann doesn't deserve her.
Not Claudia Conway.
Of course. Let's see her, Seth.
All right, here she comes. What is she doing with her life now?
Claudia Conway, 16, tells American Idol judges her social media posts mean her voice is being heard after being suppressed most of her life.
Wait, are you telling me that Claudia Conway tried out for American Idol?
Yes.
Is there tape?
I don't know, but I think that we should put our best people on it, Seth.
I think we should. All right. And then we also had a request from a viewer for more guitar. Not more cowbell, but more guitar. And so Jack has told me that we can do some Facebook guitar stuff, and then maybe next week we can show some guitars
being made
person. So this is for Noel, who asked for more Churchill guitars.
Is Noel with us, Seth?
No, I can't tell.
Well, okay. It would be nice that he could see this as it's happening. If he could just let us know.
Noel, if you're there, just type in, "Hey, I'm here." Anyway, Jack, so that's fucking awesome, buddy.
Oh, thank you, Seth. So here, there are a couple of agendas that I have. One, I just do Telecasters, which is the original 50s Fender guitar. It is almost the only thing left from the 50s in 2020 that is a living design icon that's never been changed. Okay, so I like Telecasters. So what I do, I like them. They're a little heavy sometimes, so I cut them all out. And this one I have plated with copper. They play beautifully. I put these Fender Clapton Strat necks on them. They all play great. Okay, so that's one. I don't have all of them. Here's another one I did that I wanted to play slide with. It didn't turn out like I liked, so I've been raping it recently for parts. There's another Telecaster. This I really like because it's so simple. It's all been cut out to make it lighter. Once again, it plays great.
So
Here's
that is there
yeah.
any kind of harmonics that you get from the shell that enhances any vibration across the pickup that you know?
I started thinking about that, and the only way you could figure this out effectively, yes, of course, there's always a harmonic, but to make it reasonable on any level, you would literally have to be an acoustic engineer and a mechanical engineer, because you would have to analyze with a meter. You would have to analyze what different metals at what different lengths would vibrate, for instance, in an A.
Right.
And it's well beyond me at the moment to do that.
Right.
This one is clad with an old set of Swedish work pants. This one is one of the ones being worked on, aluminum plate and leather. This is the first one I did, which was, of course, over the top. And this is a tubacaster. It's a baritone horn and a Strat where the speaker's inside the horn. I usually start out really big and then I pull back. Okay, so, and this is what that one sounds like.
I'm getting no sound on it, bud.
Oh, too bad. Okay. We'll let that go.
That's really funny. Did you hear about this guy, Yago Alex, this guy in Florida that
No.
That built a guitar out of his uncle's skeleton?
Oh, yes. I posted it. And my favorite guitar builders in the world are the guys in Trondheim, Norway, that I mentioned before. It's called Faust Guitar, and they have a custom furniture manufacturer, and they make unbelievably cool steampunk stuff. I mean, these guys are awesome. And
how much are they, Jack? Do they sell them?
Yeah, anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000, which you can get cheaper ones, but the good ones all range up in that. And theirs are really good. I was thinking of buying a few. The guy's name is Raymond Ide, and he's in Trondheim. So this is when I was making the tubacaster. I'll just go through these. This is making another one. You see the copper lining, everything.
Yep.
Now, this is one of my favorites. This is the Snow Queen. And it's all polished aluminum and rivets. And I realized I was coming out of K2 Music one day, and it was the snow on the ground. And I saw how beautifully the snow reflected in the guitar. Yeah. So I shot that picture. This is another one clad in, when the light is hitting it, the sun is hitting it, copper. That's that one again. These are the three that are hanging in Boynton McKay. One of them's the Snow Queen, and two other ones. There's one of the other ones. That's done in almost totally in aluminum, some copper. Another one. There's one where I did it in copper, and then I used pieces of a rector set, and I'd use hot solder to fill in some of the joints, and it just gives it that real nice look. Industrial look. There's one, that's one of my minimalist ones. Jeff Pendleton loves. Oh, that's not the one. There's another one. Let me see. This is the one I'm working on now, which is called the Blue Stick. Instead of Blue Stick, I thought it should be called Blue Stick. I'm sorry, this isn't the one I'm working on now. This is the beginning of my Erector set guitar. Okay, here's one that's made out of a washboard with Maggie holding it. There's a more standard one.
What'd you use on the frets?
Oh, do you mean the different colors? Or yeah, what I do is I sand and paint the ones that have the black dots on them.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's basically It goes from E to G to B, um, and all the way up to scale. And they're the ones with the black dots. And not only do I color the frets, but I sometimes color the back of the guitar so I can see where I am without looking at the fretboard.
Yeah.
Here's another one. This is when I start on one. I mark out, you can see I mark out where I'm going to cut through the guitar. And then inevitably I move the controls up near the fretboard so I can do a pedal steel, which is a volume rise with my little finger more easily.
Right. You prefer that configuration anyway.
I do. And this is the shop. This is them hanging there. This is the only Strat I've done. And that one looks quite good. That's not done. That's being worked on. This is another one that I'm working on. And don't you love that wide angle on the iPhone 12?
Cool,
isn't that cool?
Yeah, that is.
And another one, let's see. This is working on the Strat. And then this is the neck of one of them, where I've done it a little bit different on the back. And that guitar is totally white. This is my taxi guitar, which I'm going to finish in the next day or two, that has dirty plexiglass on it. See that? It's like riding in a checkered cab.
Fabulous.
And then I have the stick guitar, which is on Facebook, but which I haven't, but I'm in the process of finishing, which is just a stick. Let me see. I'll show you to it. It's being done, but I'll just show you the. Oh, there we are, Seth. You and I.
That's me too.
Oh, there, Noel. Oh, great, he's there.
Noel is here.
Hi, Noel.
Somebody said that's a chubby checker guitar.
Right. Yeah. Somebody. I'm glad, Noel, that you like them. Yikes! I don't know what the yikes was a reaction against, Seth. Do you have any?
Not again. I think yikes could have been for something.
Okay, I'll show him. Noel, let me just show you the one I'm working on now, the stick guitar.
I'll take that down and put us back up while you're searching for it.
Oh, I got it, Seth.
Okay, bud.
Okay, run it up.
Yep, there you go.
See, that guitar is just a long stick. Okay. And you'll see that it just has the controls down here. Otherwise, it's a long, long stick. And it's going to have like a fold down stock so you can put it on your knee. And it's going to be aluminum and leather. And I put a voltmeter in there just because it sort of looks cool. But Noel, you got to understand, these things play like a motherfucker. I have gotten so good at setting up necks that they're absolutely wonderful.
Well, the question is, do you sell any? I know the answer is no.
The answer is no.
No. And Patrick wanted to know if you sell any.
Yeah, Patrick also, and Noel, the thing about it is the fun I have making these is the 98% of the joy. The finished product I don't care particularly about because I just love making them, getting up every day and going out there and having ideas and doing them. Nothing's planned in advance.
It used to be motorcycles and
yes,
and aesthetic moved over to guitars. I'm interested in, the eventual cool, cafe, like I'm visualizing a coffee shop / museum space where these cool guitars are on the wall and the motorcycles are, strewn here and there about on platforms. And it's kind of like a museum space / coffee shop. That would be freaking awesome.
It would be so cool. Brian with Boynton McKay, who, for those who don't know, is about the coolest spot in the world for brunch and breakfast and lunch and stuff like that. He has one of my motorcycles up on top of the shelf, and he also has 3 of the guitars there. But it would be nice to get more of them into different spaces. I was thinking of taking the taxi guitar and showing it to Sante at Ports of Italy, because although it's very tasty Italian, low key, the fact that he and his chef spent years in Little Italy, they would understand it. So I'm going to take that over there and see if he's interested in just putting it up. But
Yep.
once again, just like the motorcycles, I will give them away occasionally, but I don't sell them.
Yeah.
So I will give a guitar sometimes to somebody, but it has to be the right person.
Sure. Truck stop hookers are probably off the list.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
That's more of a bartering thing, Seth. Oh, speaking of truck stop, this one. What's this lady's last name? She's the Democrat that doesn't want to raise the minimum wage.
I have no idea.
Sin Emma, her last name is.
Oh, Kristen Sinema. Yeah, her name is Kristen Sinema.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She wants to restore the 60-vote threshold for all elements of the Senate's work. The Arizona Democrat explains. Well, Jack, that makes a lot of sense. She's a Democrat in Arizona, so she's got to run kind of a Joe Manchin-esque, time in office where she's kind of in a purple state. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's sort of like being a Jewish politician in Damascus. You got to walk a certain line.
You got to do the Damascus two-step. We're talking yesterday. You know what? Kristen Sinema is not a hottie. She's got a Karen haircut, and that's a mistake.
Yeah.
A Karen haircut's a mistake. Look at that.
Would that sweater and that blouse, Seth? I'm sorry.
I mean, it's right off the TJ Maxx clearance shelf, isn't it?
Yeah. That's a interesting combination.
Holy shit, she's working a zebra pattern underneath that.
Yeah.
Pay attention to me, blue light special in aisle 5. Look at this. Jack, what is happening to the culture of our once great nation? You and I, last week, we had this conversation about how, I had this kind of epiphany, and it built on this conversation that you and I had, where we were talking about what is the actual organizing element of our culture now.
Mm-hmm.
Like previously, we thought that we were organized culturally by our governmental entities, and that we were one nation under God, indivisible, mm-hmm. with liberty and justice for all. Well, as we talked about time and time again, when we referenced Colin Woodard's book, American Nations, mm-hmm. this book talks about how there are actually 11 separate national groups within the United States. You and I live in Yankeedom, and New York is New Amsterdam, and there's the whole Quaker ethos that was Pennsylvania, and then there's the Scotch-Irish, Appalachian, Southern tradition. El Norte is out in Mexico and the Southwest. All of these different traditions really mean that we're made up of a bunch of different nations that think completely differently from each other. And we've coexisted this way, because the unifying force that kept us together has always been our government. But when mm-hmm. we were talking last week, it became, it kind of, a light went off, and I realized that the codifying force, our unifying force now, is our technology. And if you look at the people that, that the idea, there's a difference between the idea of a nation and the idea of a government. Mm-hmm. And the people who are members of the Trumpist nation, they feel like the increases in the pervasiveness of social networking has made their idea of where they stand in their own nation tremendously threatened. And I heard that thing that I talked to you about today, where there was a study done that the majority of the people who have been identified by the FBI have suffered financial hardship. They all have judgments against them, and many of them have filed for bankruptcy. And when you combine their feeling of threat and angst with this subtle, pervasive invasion of technology, you have two separate groups of people now. You have one group of people that identifies as something other than what we are. And Trump wasn't really, to me, the problem. Trump was just the igniting agent that highlighted this problem in the electorate.
Okay. Now, in terms of, I want to address two things. In terms of describing these people, and they have judgments against them, they have criminal records. This was a pre-existing condition.
Of course.
Okay. Trumpism is a symptom. That's all it is, of a pre-existing condition. And that pre-existing condition is something you just described. But we had this morning a wonderful discussion, okay, because it pointed to another way of looking at this. And what Seth and I do, we'll talk for an hour on the phone about an idea and the way the idea develops between us. The idea is this, is that originally there was the one, whatever that is, whether it's scientific, a planet, a star, a human being, a consciousness.
Anything that is coalesced together, be it physical, metaphorical. There's a one unit. Think of it as a planet. Think of it as a star. Think of it as a human being. Think of it as a group of human beings. Think of it as
consciousness. Okay. Now that one eventually divided, and we can talk about that in fact happens naturally in all of life as we know it. Okay. It divides. Now there are two. Each one is defining itself in relationship with the only other thing that it knows is the other one. But eventually that splinters and becomes 3 and 4, and all of a sudden you have 6 different Episcopal denominations, millions of Pentecostal groups. Now, imagine this situation that's been happening since the 50s. The 50s, Republicans want to get back to the 50s. Duck and cover. There was us, there was them. The only bad were the God-hating communists, and then the good on the white horses was the God-fearing Americans. It was simple. Of course, they want to get back to it. Who the fuck wouldn't? First of all, they were all adolescents or teenagers then, and they felt much better getting up in the morning then. So that's a no-brainer. The problem is social media, and you are more a fan of this idea than anyone I know, Seth. What happened when social media blew apart every one of these creations? Every one of these creations that were created to specifically find your identity in a smaller, more specific, more tailored group to how you felt about yourself. And an analogy is Barnes and Noble. I know there aren't a lot of Republicans that been in a bookstore except they use the men's room. But if you went into Barnes and Noble in New York, you noticed over 20 years that the magazine section became fucking huge. Why is that? Because it wasn't Life magazine and Time magazine. It was all of a sudden every subgroup, minority, nut job group, and everything had their own magazine. Model Airplane Builder.
Modern Fly Fishing.
Yes, Guns and Ammo.
American Housewife.
And that was a phenomenon in itself. And it made bookstores turn into cafes and restaurants because that's where you could find your specific group. Or
make marmalade.
Yes. Now, what happens when the internet comes along? That phenomenon, which was explosive in itself, explodes once again. And I hate to use the word granular, but that's all you can say, that all of a sudden there are thousands upon thousands of these little grains that any human being can identify with and capture in that group their self-image.
It was just like the atomization, the same kind of atomization of any celestial being in the vacuum of space. We were talking this morning about an experiment that NASA did, that NASA enabled. It was a university that did it on the International Space Station. They sent up grains of sand or particulate in a vacuum tube, and the experiment was to shake up the tube and have the individual grains. What would happen to those grains in the absence of gravity? And what happened to them is the natural state of the universe is these grains actually came together and formed one clump, and then another clump, and then another clump, until the clumps coalesced. And the interesting thing about that is the ground state of the universe is that things are naturally not prone to being isolated or atomized. And so that's kind of it's a metaphor that we were playing with this morning in our phone call when we were talking about the nature of humanity versus the nature of the physical universe that surrounds us. And it just became very apparent that once again, the things that organize us, the forces that keep us together as a nation, have kind of silently changed in the background. And technology has driven all of it. And I think that eventually technology and social networks, and in terms of currency, cryptocurrencies, electronic currencies, governments will be replaced by social networks as an organizing force. The primary organizing force in our lives today is not the primary organizing force that was in our lives years ago. Now, the primary driving and organizing force in all of our lives, in all of our existence, is our social network identity. And that forced reverse atomization brings with it a good deal of trauma for people who are incapable of recognizing and going with change. And this change to the organizing forces of our culture has happened kind of silently. It's amazing that we take for granted that when there's a riot at the Capitol, of course there's going to be videotape of every single thing. The only thing there wasn't videotape of that I really wanted there to be videotape of was Kevin McCarthy. Apparently, I just found this out. Kevin McCarthy was on the phone with Donald Trump as the rioters were breaking the glass in his office trying to get in. And he calls Trump and he says, "Help, you got to tell these people to stop." And Trump says, "Well, Kevin, I guess they feel differently about an election than you do." And you know what McCarthy said to Trump? "Who the fuck do you think you're talking to?" Isn't that amazing? But the truth of the matter is that in every other element of this case, in every other element of these tremendously earth-shaking events, Black Lives Matter happened only because of cell phone video.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Black Lives Matter happened, because you can't hide these cultural changes anymore. So the technology is the driving force behind all of these cultural changes and our economy and how we are actually organized.
So,
I'm
Seth,
organized here. This is
So-
how I'm organized.
Seth, what we're saying is that governments will be replaced by social media. Now, let's think of that for a second. The most obvious example of that in the last month is when Twitter shut down Trump. Trump could never have the power that Twitter had at that moment. So let's extrapolate that. Let's say this is governments are breaking down. You can't get Americans to join together to hate the Russians anymore. It just ain't going to happen. And it's not just Trump being an asset. It's not going to happen because because it's not a social media event. So all of a sudden, the governments get weaker and weaker. Social media, cyber currency, a number of other things obviously become extremely important, like working at home is another factor in all of this. And all of a sudden, don't you think that the really smart people like Putin and a number of other ones, even in the American government now, can see this coming and they are designing it themselves. And obviously, it's going to put the power in the hands of corporations. It's its own kind of fascism.
Vladimir Putin's statement about this is the following. I looked it up myself. Vladimir Putin says artificial intelligence is the most important development in the history of mankind, and the country that controls that will control the world. Vladimir Putin is saying that, let's see what Jeff has to say.
Yeah.
Jeff says, but governments can handle infrastructure better than social media. Yeah, that's true, Jeff. There will always be an organizing. The difference between a government and social media is that the government is how you are physically organized. Social media is how you are culturally organized.
And let me add something to that too, Jeff. And this is just as important. The governments may be able to handle it better, but how they're handling it is totally in the hands of social media.
And what happens when robotics and artificial intelligence replaces that which government provides now?
Mm-hmm.
So, including behavioral activities, including authority. The difference between a government and a nation is simply that a government has the ability to enforce its authority through the police, right? Mm-hmm. A nation is an idea of commonality. We have an idea of commonality that is sometimes and sometimes not codified. That is to say, written into rules. Right?
I don't agree with this. Zuckerberg isn't smart enough to have all the power he has. Nobody is smart enough in that realm to have the power that they have, but they are smart.
You know, it's interesting because you kind of, Noel said that, and you know that, and that's kind of an interesting, you know, when you start a company or you start an enterprise, sometimes things happen, they spin out of control. And, you know, Jeff Zuckerberg is not responsible for my cell phone camera. Jeff Zuckerberg is essentially a smart parasite, in my opinion. Yeah, he got lucky. I agree. He was able to sense that something was coming, the same way that you and I are sensing now that the nature of our oneness, the nature of how we're not atomized, the nature of our coalescence is that it is changing dramatically, and it is empowering us in ways that we can't yet appreciate. And that is a terrifying thing. And that is part of the reason that, you know, you have these people who, in this country right now, we have two political parties. And on the one hand, we have competent, rational, thoughtful people who are interested in running a democratic republic. On the other side of the coin, quite transparently, and to me, not surprisingly at all, we have an authoritarian state that cannot be allowed to get back in power again.
And Seth, to that point, that authoritarian state has always been there, not just in the United States,
Yep.
and will always be there. And it is going to be the people who are not comfortable, who cannot see themselves in the results of the change going on, either because they don't understand it, or if they do, they can't see their role in it. This is ubiquitous. This is the forever problem. It's existential, Seth. It's the forever problem. There will always be that group. Jeff says that legitimate voting results have trouble getting things done. Jeff, democracy is a horrendous form of government, primarily, not idealistically, but because it is so inefficient. So if you look at China and their authoritarian culture, they get shit done. The question is it worth the exchange? And
the question, the ultimate question that any group has to face: are your ideas compatible with modernity?
Yes.
Modernity here meaning change, rapid change.
Yes.
And, I said to you this morning, I'm so happy. I just feel happy. I'm embracing the changes that are happening around us. I'm interested to see what happens next. I'm curious. I'm armed. I'm angry. Nobody's going to fuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they do, at least I'll be on my feet when I die.
Right.
And I'm interested in seeing what happens, man.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't wait to see what happens. But there are people for whom change is an existential threat. And it's not going to get any better. We talked earlier about how, visualizing the river of paradigm shift. I've been talking about it for 10 years. The river paradigm shift is the change represents the pace of the current. And the harder you grab onto that side of that river, the more you're going to be torn apart. And you're seeing it now live on the Senate floor.
Let me call you out on this, Seth. I agree with you 100%. Jeff suggests a film crew should run the country. Some crews.
That's easy for him to say because he's a prop man.
It is. And the other thing, it better fucking be a union crew. We won't get into this. I got two speeds. You don't like this one, you're going to hate the other one. So
go ahead, call me out. You were going to say something.
What I'm saying is you and I are in a very elitist position. Let me just call you out on this, Seth. We can sit here and say, change, we welcome it. It's interesting. I want to see how it turns out. Keep in mind, for a majority of people, change hurts. It hurts. And so we cannot speak except in this elitist atmosphere that we're living in, you and I. We cannot speak for these people.
Well, we're elitists only in as much as we have an intellect which is capable of dealing with the change happening around us.
It has to do
with
no
other way am I an elitist. I'm not an elitist. I'm not an elitist financially.
I'm not saying you're
like everybody else.
Seth, I'm saying that what we're saying here comes from an elitist position compared to many, many people. You haven't lost your job to an immigrant.
What does that feel like when you say that? What are you visualizing as the differentiators between our daily experience and their daily experience?
I was just getting into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please do.
Our jobs aren't being threatened by robots. Our jobs are not.
We know of.
Yeah, that's because we are. Our jobs are not being threatened by immigration. Our jobs are not being threatened by the fact that this cunt doesn't want to raise the minimum wage. Most people are getting fucked in the ass every day from somewhere, whether it's the insurance salesman, whether it's a guy breaking into their house or stealing their car, whether it's a corrupt Trumpian local asshole mouth-raising politicians, they're getting fucked all the time. Okay. And the thing about black people is they've always known they were getting fucked.
Oh, absolutely.
White people, they don't understand. One, they know they're getting fucked. They just don't understand where it's coming from. And that's why they vote Republican.
Yeah, it seems to me like the boundaries between races are rapidly evaporating, and that evaporation of boundaries and that coalescing is a tremendously threatening thing to the very same people that you're talking about. That they see that 1950s means that everybody knows their place, and 2021 means that technology is the great leveling of the field of play.
Yes. And hence the expression, remember the expression, uppity Negro?
Yeah. Or
uppity.
Uppity Jew, for that matter.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Absolutely.
So, Jack, the thing about it is that you go and look at what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now, and you see America on one side of the coin, and you see the GQP on the other side of the coin, and the difference couldn't be more stark. You have articulate people who are Hispanic and Asian American and African American and the Jew, and they're all articulate and they're brilliant and they're saying what really happened and what's apparent in front of all of us. And then you've got these fucking Martians, these fucking mouth-breathing idiots who can't string a sentence together, and they represent the President of the United States, and they're backed up by 44 members of the GOP who are essentially telling the rest of America never to vote for them again. In what way can these fucking assholes possibly think that 2022 is going to be good for them?
Well, they are, and I keep saying this, Seth, they are fighting a rear guard action. Somebody said, run, but you guys stay here. Okay.
Yeah.
You guys stay here. So I want everybody to run, but you guys are the ones that are going to have to take the onslaught and slow progress down.
Right. Somebody just said, "What's the matter with Kansas?" And I thought, "Is somebody reading? Can you see the book titles over my shoulder?" That's a book that talks about what's wrong with the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And really, Jack, what's wrong with the Republican Party is that they are clinging to the edge of the river.
Yes, absolutely.
And trying to claw back, the 1950 that's on the horizon.
Yep. Boy, do they miss the 50s.
Yeah.
Now, I tell you what scared me more than anything in reading about in reading about this attack on the Capitol, I never realized that Pence had his own football.
He did? I didn't know that.
Yes. He was being escorted down to safety. Can you imagine Mike Pence and mother? Where's that football going to end up, on their mantelpiece? I mean, I that scares the shit out of me.
We were talking the other day about American Compromise, right?
Yeah.
And everything. And by the way, everybody listening to us right now, run out and get American Compromise. It is a fabulous book that really talks chapter and verse about how Donald Trump is run by the freaking KGB.
And has been for decades.
Has been for 40 years.
Yep.
Interesting tidbit within this book. American Compromise is about essentially all of the different relationships between Donald Trump and the rest of his cadre of players. And obviously front and center, Jack, is Jeffrey Epstein, Coney Island's own Jeffrey Epstein, right? And Jeffrey Epstein basically made sex tapes of all the movers and shakers in New York City.
You bet.
And also Rudy Giuliani, who not only is compromised by Jeffrey Epstein, but also has many of the very same Russian relationships that Donald Trump does. Full pause on that.
Mhm.
Going back to 1973, Bill Barr, our former Attorney General, member of Opus Dei, right? From an Opus Dei household in which his Jewish father, who converted to Catholicism, was the headmaster at Dalton. Dalton is it's Dalton, Choate, and all of these prep schools. Dalton is a prep school for the Ivy League.
Mm-hmm.
And his father was a tremendously disliked headmaster at Dalton because of his politics and because of his dour nature. Well, his father was also a bit of a weirdo, and his father wrote this book. This book is called Space Relations by Donald Barr. And in Space Relations, there are a collection of young girls who are passed around as sex slaves of ultra wealthy men of the elite class. Interestingly, Bill Barr's father ended up hiring a very young teacher named Jeffrey Epstein at the Dalton School.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the jury is out as to whether Donald Barr cultivated this idea within Jeffrey Epstein, because, of course, pedophilia was something that Donald Barr, Bill Barr's father, had on his mind as he wrote this book.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, pedophilia is everything that the GOP accuses the Democrats of. No, if there's one thing that I know, it's if the GOP accuses someone of something, they themselves have this tremendous feeling of guilt and rage about it.
They are, Seth,
for you, Jack.
They are the masters of projection. Trump, of course, as the leader of that. Somebody said, hope there really is a P-tape. Forget the fucking P-tape. The P-tape is nothing. Of course there is. That's nothing. The tape is Trump in the back of Epstein's plane with a 14-year-old. Not
only that, everybody that's been on that fucking island or at any of Jeffrey Epstein's properties has been recorded. And that's what American Compromise is about. And there were witnesses to the cameras everywhere.
And you wonder, they always wondered, where the hell did Jeffrey Epstein get his money? And they would say, oh, investments, hedge funds. No.
I run money for people. No, he didn't run money for people. He ran people.
Yes.
He was a pimp. He got young girls for these people. Okay, so Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father,
who just named who named one of his yachts Grizzly Ann.
Lady Ghislaine, yeah. Lady Ghislaine, yeah. He actually was discovered dead, floating in the water. Jack, how was he floating in the water? Face up.
How can that happen?
Murder is how that can happen. And what happened was he was whacked by the Mossad because he threatened.
Tell me, was Netanyahu?
It might have been Ehud Barak. I don't recall. But he was a Mossad agent and also a KGB agent. And Ghislaine Maxwell, his daughter, Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, is tied very closely to this whole KGB operation. KGB/FSB, these organizations morph into the Russian mafia state under the leadership of Vladimir Putin. But the difference between Russian intelligence services and American intelligence services is that this is how the Russians operate. They compromise and they inflict their will through these relationships, which many times are mutually beneficial and not just a here and there arm twisting or ice pick, whatever. People die all the time. That's the way this goes down. If you rat on Putin, you die. But you know, when I was a young man and I moved in with Jessica, I was offered a job at the relatively new Grand Hyatt New York. I was a doorman at the Grand Hyatt New York. It was great. I made $200 a night, and this was back in 1988 or 1989. And when I was at the Grand Hyatt, before I got there, the Grand Hyatt New York was one of Donald Trump's first big deals, right? It was a deal with the Hyatt Corporation. The Hyatt Corporation had all sorts of commercial relationships with suppliers. But Donald Trump didn't get the televisions for the Grand Hyatt through the Hyatt. He got them through a guy named Simeon Kislin. Simeon Kislin, Sam Kislin, ran an electronics store on 23rd Street and 5th Avenue where you could buy TVs, color TVs, Sony Trinitrons, etc. But you could, if you walked by the store, and I remember the place, it had a big sign in the window that said, "We speak Russian." And you'd go into this store, and they had in this store televisions that worked on the Russian and American format. But you could buy Russian formatted TVs because the Russians use the European television format.
CCAM, it's called.
Yep. Right. So they had a different format. And in New York City, before Russian agents and operatives in the KGB or any Russian foreign service employee, before they went anywhere from the United States when they were going home, they would always stop by Sam Kislin's store and load up on TVs that they would sell back in Russia for a freaking fortune. Because in those days, if you were able to get TVs, you know, it's worth 8 months' salary for the average Russian. It turned into a KGB front, and Sam Kislin turned into a billionaire commodities trader. But it was 100% KGB operated. It is this relationship. Donald Trump bought all the TVs for the Grand Hyatt New York from Sam Kislin on 23rd Street and 5th Avenue. Sam Kislin reported back to his KGB operator, his case manager, in the American Residenciera, I believe is what they called, American Residenciera, the American residence for KGB, which is the Soviet embassy in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
But for KGB purposes, they call it American Residenciera. He reports back, and they say, a young businessman who's a real estate guy here in New York. Keep feeding him. And they develop a relationship. Next thing you know, Donald Trump is laundering huge sums of Russian money through real estate in the Trump Tower and elsewhere in other properties that he owns. That's how Donald Trump established his relationship with the Russians. It was a symbiotic two-way relationship that just happened to crisscross other KGB relationships in the United States, not the least of which was his good buddy, Jeff Epstein, who had the treasure trove of compromat in his possession that he gave to the KGB or that they took.
And Michael Cohen, married to the daughter of the head of the taxi mob in Brighton Beach, Little Odessa, right?
Yep.
Same
And
routine.
it's the same thing.
Mhm.
So we are watching an impeachment trial, which is based on evidence that we have all seen with our own eyes. What we haven't seen with our own eyes, what is still coming, is all of this. And the GOP is going to have this around its neck in perpetuity forever and ever and ever. They knew it. They did nothing about it. The bad news is Russians don't like just one political party.
Yes.
Sam Kislin has donated a royal shit ton of money to Chuck Schumer's campaigns as well. These people, they're equal opportunity compromisers.
So, Seth, which leads us to Donald Trump's immediate future. Can you bring up my page here? Fannie Willis.
My new favorite girl.
Did you see her on Rachel last night?
I did. She got there first, man. I mean, what an amazing thing that a Georgia district attorney in Fulton County just happens to be the only law enforcement agency that is not listed as a witness in Donald Trump's tampering. In other words, every other law enforcement agency Donald Trump was on the phone with trying to get them to fix this election for him in Georgia.
She's the only one. And I'll tell you, watching her, I wouldn't fuck with her.
Don't fuck with her.
Oh, she is going to make his life a living nightmare.
Do not fuck with her. And so this is number one, right? So there is blatant and obvious right in front of the camera.
Right.
And it's not, and just mind you, this is not a political trial. This is a criminal trial. Mm. There's this political criminal trial.
Mm-hmm.
And then we haven't even heard from
Letitia.
Not only Letitia James, but where the fuck is Cyrus Vance Jr.?
Mm-hmm.
I heard a little worrying news the other day, Jackie boy.
Let's hear it, buddy.
Guess who's not running for re-election?
Cyrus
Vance Jr., pal.
Really?
Really.
Tell me about this.
When are we going to get a prosecution? Where is the prosecution of this guy?
Mm-hmm.
He has a CFO. He has all the documents from Deutsche Bank. He has everything he needs. Where is the prosecution? Because we know it's as obvious as the implied KGB connections.
So what's going to happen?
Well, what's going to happen is the people at Deutsche Bank, I'm sure they have all the information from the accounts at Deutsche Bank, which show Russian money.
Yes. And since so many of as a matter of fact, all of the people that handled Trump's account are gone.
Do you think they whacked Trump?
Who do you think would be whose interest would it be? And I'm not talking revenge here because, you have a list of 250 million people, but in whose economic future interest would it be most advantageous to have him gone?
Vladimir Putin.
Why?
Because he no longer serves an effective purpose and is only a liability.
Yeah, but don't you think that if he were allowed to live in a dock on the Black Sea, that he would be that Putin could use him for propaganda purposes?
No, I think the risk reward is done. And I think the only thing that saves these investigations from coming to fruition is Donald Trump being gone. And I got to tell you, it would be the greatest political caper. It would be the greatest crime in history And these people don't get caught, man. They just don't get caught.
Well, I disagree with that. They've gotten caught
That
a
they don't get
lot.
caught?
I'm sorry.
That they don't get caught?
Oh yeah, the two guys in England. Please.
No, I get, I get that. I do. I understand entirely. That was a message sent, though. I mean, Putin was sending a message. When, when Putin poisons somebody, he wants it to be loud because he doesn't want anybody else to do anything like support the Ukraine or
Notice
support Navalny.
Jeff says, and he's right, Trump is too much of a loose cannon to be allowed to survive for Putin.
So, and are we on the Epstein death watch?
I'm surprised that Grizzly Ann hasn't met in some kind of trouble. Although I love this. I want to give this to you for a second. This is wonderful. You remember this woman who said that where is she? Let me find her here. She said, oh yes, Anna Sorokin. Do you remember her, Seth?
I don't know. Is it only the Daily Mail that you read?
Okay,
is that the only publication?
No, this was news. Remember, she was jailed for 3 years because she pretended to be high-flying, whatever, great family, something, and she spent $275,000 in New York hotels and everything, and said she was related to who the fuck knows who, and she got in jail, and she just came out, and I lost her. God damn. Oh, here we go. Anna Sorokin. She just came out and said, and I love this expression. This reminds me of
prison is so exhausting.
Yes, prison is so exhausting. This sounds like Susan Collins talking about Donald Trump.
Prison is it's so tiring.
Yes.
I mean, they made me wake up at a certain time.
Oh, I absolutely love it. Which brings us, of course, to Nikki Haley.
Explain. Yeah, she's Nikki Haley. Now, let me ask you a question.
Explain that to me, buddy.
Oh, well, you first explain something to me. Who the fuck does Nikki Haley's hair, and why are they not in prison?
Maybe for the same reason she's not. Let me tell you, she is going for the slot opposing Ted Cruz.
Dude, Ted Cruz is not getting the GOP nomination. Nikki Haley is much more attractive as a candidate than Ted Cruz is.
Really?
Ted Cruz's own kid wouldn't kiss him.
That's true. Now, Seth, the thing I'm saying is because there's no question the GOP is going to divide. There's going to be two candidates. You'll have Ted Cruz in one, and you'll have Nikki Haley in the other.
The GOP is going to be the party of Trump until 2022. In 2022, the Democrats will expand their hold on the United States Senate and probably will expand their hold on the United States House. And I'll tell you why. Because in 2022, there are 20 Republican senators up for re-election out of a possible 34. So just the numbers themselves indicate that there would be a swing. But the party is still very much the party of Donald Trump. And that is a toxicity that they cannot overcome. They had to break from him. They had to become Democrat light, and they refused. They have no identity to speak of other than authoritarianism. And this is not because of anything other. This is not because of the Republican reps that we have in DC. This is because of the changes in our culture that we talked about before and the authoritarian tendency of a good number of people who are registered as Republicans who vote in this country. There was a poll done last week. Fully 40% of registered Republicans who answered this survey said that violence is necessary to reclaim American traditions and values.
But I don't see how you can just stand there and say this is not going to happen until 2022. If in fact there are a lot of Republicans that realize that there's a very good chance of them losing.
I mean, we talked this afternoon about the 100,000 GOP registrants that we know about that have switched parties. That's only this past 2 fucking weeks.
Yeah.
They are hemorrhaging people. If you're an 18-year-old person in this country and you go down to the town office to register, how many of the 18-year-old people in this country that are registering to vote are going to register Republican? No one. Republicans are, I'll tell you what. Here's an analogy for you. In the state of Maine, if you build a new house, 1% of the new house constructions in the state of Maine put an oil heater in the basement. The other 99% are LP, liquid propane, and heat pumps.
No shit.
Republicans are the oil burners, are the heavy oil burning petroleum heat solution, the heating oil. Republicans are the heating oil of the political world.
What they are is they're the Packard of the car world.
Right.
Yes.
The Edsel.
Yeah. Edsel was, I have a thing in, I like Edsels. They had huge engines. They had like 440s in them or something.
Yeah, and they had the vagina on the grill.
Yeah. So what is wrong with the idea before 2022 that Haley is who she is now, and the break-off people in the Republican Party start to look for a candidate in 2024?
Under what philosophical central theme?
Reasonable Republicans.
What does it stand for?
Center right.
And fiscal responsibility. You can't run on that anymore. Starting with George Bush.
Well, yeah, but keep in mind they're redefining themselves here. They have to, and it's very important. So, don't you think fiscal responsibility would be one of the ways they would separate themselves from Democrats and Republicans?
No, not to me, Jack. Not when the majority of the Republican Party, not when the core, the essence of the Republican Party is an authoritarian branch of the American populace. That's really what's driving the core. Those authoritarians are going to have a political home somewhere. They represent a small minority of the American people, but that's the Republican Party. And getting rid of that authoritarian stain is not the kind of thing that we stand for this now.
Trust me.
People are still scared.
Yep. I agree.
It's going to be 20 years before these people are out of the woods.
Yeah.
Here's the question. Do we really require 2 political parties in this country to function?
Well, let's think about in 20 years what technology is going to do.
Exactly.
And then you ask yourself that question.
Exactly.
Does it become a different animal? Is it a question of really just sitting down in front of your computer and hitting a switch? I mean, it's got to be. I mean, it's accelerating that fast. And
we're voting electronically.
And ranked choice voting.
Yep.
Citizens United will be gone if we're lucky.
Yep, we're not going back.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing time, Seth.
People are so. I ran into a friend. Well, I guess I can say this. I ran into a friend in Hannaford yesterday, and I said to this friend, "Well, how you doing?" And this friend said, "I'm not doing well." And I said, or this friend said, "Well, I'm kind of holding up." And I said, "What's going on?" And this friend said, "Oh, look around this." I said, "I know you." You're a lifelong Democrat. This is the time when you should be reveling in what's happening to our country, because only now are you able to say that you have vanquished your fucking enemies. If you're a Democrat and you're not loving every single thing that is happening politically in this country and understanding the context within which it happens, you're not paying attention.
Is that what he was referring to, or was he referring to something else in his life that
He was referring to the climate around the political climate around the impeachment trial? They're not going to convict him. That was number one on her hit parade of things that, as if a conviction represented the end political goal of the impeachment trial.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Donald Trump is never going to be president again. And of course the GOP is dying a tortured death. But people get fixated on the moment. People get fixated on the headline and not what's actually happening. What's actually happening is the sounds that you're hearing come out of your television and your computer. Those are the sounds of the GOP dying. That's what this sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
It is a dead political party with zero future.
You have to listen very carefully for those sounds. And it helps that if it's a joyous recognition, you have to listen carefully because the news of the day has become so important, Seth.
Yeah.
I think everybody loses track of the wide shot. And that's why it was so amazing in the Senate. I take my hats off to these House managers.
Brilliant.
They were, talk about the best and the brightest. Holy shit. And so when they went through, historically, Trump's buildup to this moment, when they they parallel cut all the actions in one timeline. I mean, you saw the Republicans went nuts because it was such a professional presentation.
And even they themselves, many of the Republicans in the Senate said, "Oh no, the House managers did a great job."
Oh, it was, but notice the way they react, that they criticize for being a professional job.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So to me, we have to, you and I are listening for the slightest whisper of the death of the GOP because we not only welcome it, we believe it.
Right.
But for a lot of people, it takes an enormous amount of concentration and study.
I think we're missing the whispers because they're roars.
Yeah. Well, we hear them. You have to understand our hearing is different than a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's really just our bias.
Yeah.
It's our rose-colored glasses.
But I mean, you and I can have a conversation about the physical nature of the universe, and at the same time as we're having that conversation, you and I both understand that we're making a metaphorical cultural reference at the same time, and we're on the same page in the playbook, and our mind's eyes are, we're visualizing why this makes sense for us at the same time, and going to that place where we zoom out and we are at 50,000 feet and then we're in outer space, that's the way in which you open your ears. You change your perspective and you change your focus from what my friend was experiencing in the supermarket yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
If you remove yourself from the anxiety of daily life, all of a sudden you're able to hear and see and appreciate things that are actually happening around you. And what's actually happening, if you stop the panic machine in your own head, oh my God, you start to see what's really happening.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not afraid of the cultural changes, if you push off from that river's edge and start swimming in the river, you can hear everything that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And your village is out there in that river. It's not clinging to the river's edge. That's the only hope that you have,
Mm-hmm.
is navigating that river of paradigm shift with your community, with
Mm-hmm.
your village. You can build a village. And when you do that, when you talk to people like we speak, you start to get the ability to contextualize all of these massive changes. And in the background, Jack, we have our faces in these screens all the time, absorbing vast amounts of information that help us interpret these things. And that's why, as scary as these past 4 years have been, for me, they've been tremendously fulfilling at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's my personal sense.
Mm-hmm.
And now I feel validated in that. I feel vindication because it's all coming to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
The shit that Jack and Seth said at the table at Boynton McKay in 2016. We're like, hey, there's no way this guy doesn't go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
I think you predicted he'd end up dead.
I still do.
I do too.
But as Jim Signorelli said one day, he said, Jack, our bodies don't float. Jim.
You know, how I escaped death, you know, with all the crazy shit from Brooklyn, you know, and running, skitching on the backs of buses in the snow, playing in the street until 4 o'clock in the morning. How the fuck did I not die?
You know, I never heard anyone else use that word except for my teenage friends in the winter. Skitching.
Yeah.
Skitching. We used to do that out in Princeton. We'd take our 54 Chevy, Crying in the Weeds, we called it, and we'd go skitching. And then I bought this guitar. I thought it looked too new. It was secondhand. So we tied it to the back of the car and bounced it along the road for 5 miles so it would look more sort of ethnic.
Yeah.
Skitching. Oh, man.
You know, the New York City bus, the MTA buses, they used to have where the top part of the frame came down, it was a rear engine vehicle. And in the back, where the rear engine lid was, there was a seam, and it was about this big, and you could fit your fingers in it, right? And if you fit your fingers in the seam, if it had just snowed, you know, those things weigh a ton, so they're going up the hill, but you could hang on to it and just ski on the snow behind a New York City bus.
So your life went between skitching and kvetching.
Skitch and kvetch. That's the bar that we've got to open up here on the mid coast. Skitch and kvetch. And if you can pronounce it, you get a free drink.
You know, I was thinking you described pulling back in the wide shot to 50,000 feet. I was going to say, you and me both. I was going to say, and as you're pulling back, you pass the Jewish satellite on your right.
With the six lasers. Did you get to see that show that I was talking to you about, the cruise with Skeet Levitch?
No.
Cruise. Oh God, you got it. It was on Netflix. It was about this guy that used to give tours, the New York City double-decker bus tours. And he was this aesthetic maniac. And he just went around the city with a camera. And he was recording himself giving these tours. And he had a cameraman recording him giving the tours. And the idea, the downfall of New York City was what he was really railing against. and the Urban Outfitters and the Bed Bath and Beyonds, you know, that would come into Fifth Avenue where all the fabulous, you know, Stanford White designed buildings were. So he would be driving, he's on the top of the double-decker bus, and he says, down this street, Edgar Allan Poe wrote his last work. Before he died, destitute and alcoholic. Right down that street, you can see the house. That's where Edgar Allan Poe lived. And next door, the new Bed Bath and Beyond is opening up next week. And he did it as he says, on your left, the last house Edgar Allan Poe ever lived in with his wife. And he went into minute detail about Poe. On your right, the new Bed Bath and Beyond.
I love it. So I posted two things on Facebook that I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen the band auditioning guitar players?
No.
It's funny. It's funny. Watch it. It's very clever. The other thing is a skit that John Cleese and what's his name do in a bookstore. Marty Feldman is a customer looking for a book. I've never seen this skit before. Have you seen it?
Marty Feldman
and John Cleese.
Oh, God.
It's on my Facebook page, Seth.
Marty Feldman?
Yes.
A Jewish comedian?
Yes.
How'd that happen?
I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
You said that documentary that I loved about the Estonia ship. They said that Rotten Tomatoes gave it an 18, and I understand why now.
Why?
Because a lot of it is interviewing Swedes, and interviewing a Swede is the most thankless, frustrating. Because they are brought up.
Have you ever done that, Jack?
I have. They have been brought up not to show any emotion at all. And since 50% of it is interviewing Swedes, I can imagine that they all wanted to blow their brains out. Okay. And I was thinking why it got such a low rating. You will see you're talking about one of the greatest nautical disasters in the history of mankind.
Crazy.
Yes. Crazy. 850 people died.
So it was a mistake that they rammed it, do you think? Or
no, fuck no. It was carrying.
It was on purpose then.
It was carrying Russian missile secrets.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff says thank you for posting that, by the way.
It is. In the fact that I've never seen an English sketch with John Cleese before blew me away.
Right.
And
there's just BBCs. There's like 2 BBCs, and like we've seen everything on each one.
That's right. And the thing that amazes me is how it's one take, how they could remember their lines with the names of these books. Oh my God.
John Cleese was a fucking genius, but he had an emotional, nervous breakdown at the end of Fawlty Towers, which is why they didn't pick it up for the second season.
I don't think that's true. I think that they had to shoot that so fast. They had to shoot an episode a day because that's how much in a studio with a bedroom set and then they go out and shoot the exterior separate than that, but there weren't many of them.
Yeah.
And the budget was non-existent. Ridiculous. They had spent 2 weeks, John Cleese and what's her name, spent 2 weeks in Mallorca, living in a hotel, writing this stuff. You have to understand, for the English, they didn't know how funny it was going to be. They didn't know the kind of legs it would get. This was just another low-budget BBC comedy show. Okay.
Jeff asks if we knew that Cleese was an attorney. No, but I'm not surprised.
Is that right?
Jeff, are you saying an attorney just because of a fish called Wanda?
That film has more funny lines in it. One of my favorite, Kevin Kline, Michael Palin. Michael Palin walking down the street after having a huge argument with Kevin Kline, and Kevin Kline shouts, "Don't touch him, he's mine."
Kenny. The character's name was Kenny. The character's name was Kenny, and when he finally had enough of Kevin Kline Klein made fun of him and said, "No, it's Kenny coming to kill me."
I tell you, that
Oh,
film was genius. And the next one, the follow-up one that was horrible. They just
of course
didn't,
it was.
they
Oh, of
just,
course it was.
but that film itself is a piece of
Oh,
genius.
oh, driving on the wrong side of the road in England and calling everybody asshole.
Yeah.
CIA, the guy in the CIA with no clue whatsoever. Although I really wanted the black trench coat and the funny hat like he had. That
Right.
was great.
I mean, the funniest part of that is the guy with the dog, played by with the old woman with the dog.
The dog was played by Kellyanne Conway, wasn't she?
No, she was a dog, not a truck stop.
Right.
So anyway, Seth, the idea that Palin is trying to kill her with that block falling off. I have never laughed so hard in my life. I just,
Pissed myself,
I
man.
still can't watch that scene without crying. It's so funny.
God.
Oh,
And it's the kind of scene you can watch over and over again and it stop
oh,
being funny.
oh.
Speaking of which, I've never talked to you about this scene, and I was at Brooklyn College in film school when After Hours came out, Scorsese's After Hours, the quintessential New York film, After Hours. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
You haven't seen Scorsese's After Hours?
No. How many times do I have to say no? No.
I don't know. Are you not a Scorsese fan?
I am certain films. Others,
So
not so much.
this one stars Griffin Dunn.
I don't know who that is.
You do, actually. When you see Griffin Dunn, you'll know exactly who that is.
Mhm.
Dominic, I think he's related to Dominic Dunn. And Griffin Dunn, ironically, showed up numerous times on the Lolita Express flight manifest.
No shit.
No shit. American Compromat by the book. Just go on Audible. You listen to it on Audible.
Oh, you know what we should do? And I don't have it downloaded. The picture of that guy that gouged the eye out of that cop at the Capitol.
Yeah.
I want to give that as much legs as possible because they're looking for this guy.
I know. And they're going to find him. There's more tape that's coming out bit by bit. Yeah, I know. Pretend It Was a City was fucking fabulous.
Yeah, I mean,
Ian Leibowitz, just brilliant.
oh, shit. Let me see. I think I really want to bring that up, Seth.
Yeah, it's late in the show. Maybe we do it next week and see.
No, I got it here, buddy. I got it. Hang on. Let me make it bigger. I want everybody to take a look at this guy in the hopes that we can find him, because this guy has a face that just deserves to be kicked until death. I think that's the biggest I can make him.
No, we can see him.
Okay. This guy, if anybody has any idea who this guy is, you've got to call the FBI most wanted people, because this guy deserves to go down real hard.
He does. Yeah, he does. Give me a sec. We're gonna do you one better here, big boy.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there you go. There I go. And we're gonna get this young man up on the screen in larger than life. Well, I bet we have a name to put with him soon. And I bet you that by the time we go on the air next Friday at 8:00, our man is in custody.
Good. Yeah.
There he is. If you know this pixelated douchebag, look at him. I mean, isn't this the guy that you go to the Car Quest and he's behind the counter? I mean the sad, you said before that we have an elitist perspective, and I have to agree with you 100%. Because I'm thinking, Jack, about all the people that we've seen who have become celebrities of the authoritarian right, and they're all losers.
Mm-hmm.
Each and every one of them is a fucking loser,
Mm-hmm.
including this guy from Maine that was arrested in Connecticut. And he was arrested in Connecticut last week. Last week he was arrested in Connecticut. I don't know his name. His name really isn't that important.
Is he from the county? Yeah, that's him.
This is the guy. He's from Maine. He was arrested in Connecticut. He's got a look in his face. I want to club him like a baby harp seal on the ice floe.
Mm-hmm.
I want to break his face into a million little pieces. And then I realize he's a meat cutter in the fucking Hannafords.
Oh.
He's a meat cutter. He's a Meshuggah meat cutter in the Hannafords. And this guy is a famous white supremacist in the state of Maine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my fault that I want to beat his ass so badly. He's made me feel this way. I can say that. Mm-hmm. This is the one time I'm not going to take ownership of my own feelings. This guy is going out of his way to make me want to kill him.
Well, it also is a rationale why we can feel like we're elitists. He gives us permission.
You're absolutely right. I mean, an eye for an eye wouldn't be enough. I agree. I want to kill that guy. Mm-hmm. I can't get past it. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to. This isn't a confession. If he ends up dead, don't look for me. I went to a Quaker school.
Well, imagine if he can do that to a policeman at the Capitol, what would he do to a Jew?
He would get, you know what he would do to a Jew? He would get filled with little holes about the width of a 9mm bullet.
That's only the entrance wound.
And the exit. I don't have any fucking hollow point.
Oh, speaking of that, anything you can share with us about the...
No, and I'm not going to talk about it until it's fruition.
Okay.
What Jack is referring to, the case against the angry white supremacist in my life continues and becomes more interesting.
So what if it turned out to be this eye gouger? Would that surprise you?
No, I think there's I think there's a guy that it's a blue collar guy. It's a blue collar guy who can't take seeing somebody care for black people. Mm-hmm. Can't understand that somebody saying that black people have equal rights to you is not saying I'm taking anything away from you. I'm not taking anything away from you. I couldn't take anything away from you by supporting this black person's right to have the same rights as you, because you have nothing, including pride. You have nothing that I can take away from you. You loathsome sack of shit. The only thing that I can take away from you is my attention. And I will, as soon as I'm satisfied that I've gotten my pound of flesh out of your fucking mouth-breathing, cousin-fucking, no-bathing, polyester-wearing ass. You fucking idiot.
Boy, I'm glad I'm not on the wrong side of that.
Jack, and my shoulders are not in good shape, so I don't have any, I'm not going to, I weigh 270 pounds.
I wouldn't brag about that.
If I hit somebody, it's going to hurt. Mm-hmm. It's happened before. It's not pretty. Mm-hmm. It's going to hurt. I don't want to do it. I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter. I don't want to hurt anybody, but these people really do deserve it.
They do.
Honestly, Jack, what does it solve, though? What does that prove, other than getting me on the radar?
You can't get rid of them all. I mean, I am truly. They're going to look back on the Republicans in 2020 in the Senate, just like they look back on the Nazis in the Reichstag in 1940.
Yeah.
And the thing about the only thing I can see is just saying you're not going to be allowed to vote for 4 or 8 years. I mean, I'm sorry, it's authoritarian, but you're a speed bump. You know,
I actually don't think that is. What I would say about that is no, go right ahead. Try to convince as many people as you possibly can that authoritarian white supremacy and Nazism is something that they should support. Let's see how that works for you at the polls when the facade, the joke, the myth of fiscal conservatism is out the window, of personal responsibility is out the window.
American family values, Seth.
Yeah, family values.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What kind of family values is killing a police officer?
Well, the Adams family values.
They have proven that they have done so much damage to their own brand by not leading their electorate. They followed their electorate.
Mm-hmm.
You notice the difference between the two parties? The Democrats lead their electorate.
Yeah.
We have ideas.
There's something to be said against from the ground up.
The idea that you follow this authoritarian taint of the GOP.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Daddy, I think we've done it again. We've imagined to capture millions of formerly Fox News viewers to the Seth and Jack show.
I can't wait. Well, next week's show is going to be great because we're going to have the aftermath of the impeachment to go over. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like we've said before, you just can never tell what's going to happen in the news. Maybe one day we'll talk about the fact that Joe Biden's doing an amazing job. Maybe we can do that one day. By the way, COVID, the two viruses in America are in retreat this week.
Yes.
COVID and the GQP, and we will follow that story further. See you, Jeff, as well. Thank you for stopping in. Everybody, please, if you like the show, share it with your friends. We'll be back next week at 8:00 on Friday night. What a great way to hang out on a Friday night, man.
Isn't it great? I mean, what else are you going to do? Go to the bar?
No, as a matter of fact, in the spring, what we're going to end up doing is Friday night hangout. We're going to see each other Saturday morning for coffee.
Yeah, but don't tell anybody.
It's going to be fabulous. Yeah, I know. We're going to, it'll be cool. We'll have a good time. Thank you, book user. All right. Thank you very much for tuning in. Jack, great show. Thank you very much, buddy.
Take care, love.
Talk to you later, bud.
You too.
Bye.